Welcome to the Happier and Healthier podcast. I'm your host, Maria Marlowe, and this is a place where we don't rely on good luck or good genes for our health and happiness, but rather we create it with our thoughts and our actions each and every single day. Each week, I'll bring you a thought or a guest that will help you live your happiest and healthiest life. Are you ready? First off, before we jump into today's interview, I just want to say thank you to everyone who sent me these beautiful messages and DMs and written iTunes reviews for the podcast, telling me how much you're enjoying them, that you're listening to them, some of them twice so you can take notes, and you're really liking the guests and enjoying all of the information that you're learning. So I love getting those messages, and I especially love getting them on iTunes review form, as it really helps us get incredible guests on the show, and more importantly, for more people to find the podcast. So if you haven't written an iTunes review and you're enjoying the podcast and you feel like you're learning new things and getting value out of it, I would so appreciate if you just took a minute or two to write a review on iTunes. If you do write a review, you can send me an email at info@mariamarlowe.com. That's MARLOWE for Marlowe. And we'll send you back a free 3-day meal plan as a little thank you for taking the time to write the review. All right, so today's guest is Tara Mackey, and Tara has such an incredible story. I actually didn't realize the full extent to her story before she got on here. I knew a little bit. We have a bunch of mutual friends, and we've texted and Instagrammed and all of these things, but it was the first time that we really had a full-on conversation, and just to hear what she's been through and how she's changed it all around is really a testament to the fact that mindset is everything. If we can change our mind, we can really change our life, no matter what the circumstances are. This is a woman who grew up with a mother addicted to drugs. Her mother was doing cocaine on the way to the hospital to deliver her. She watched her mother overdose at the age of 6. She herself started taking medication at a really young age to deal with the trauma, and just doctors started adding on one prescription after another until she was taking over a dozen prescription medications for all sorts of different issues, from depression to skin to birth control. And she realized that all of these things were not serving her. And she decided to, as she puts it, take her power back, stop giving her power away, and started to figure out how to heal her body, how to heal her mind, and really just take more responsibility for her own life. She decided not to be a victim of her circumstances, but rather use her circumstances to not only create a better life for herself, but now to help other people create a better life for themselves as well. She's the creator of the Organic Life blog, as well as the author of Cured by Nature, and her latest book, Wild Habits, which we're going to talk about today, and is all about mastering your mindset to achieve anything and everything that you want in your life. So I think she has a lot of great wisdom, and I really enjoyed speaking with her, so I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Tara, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about your book and hear about all the things you've been up to. I just saw on Instagram you just had your Wild Habits book launch party in LA, and it looked amazing. Can you share with us, so the full book is called Wild Habits: Unlock Your Mind, Improve Your Health, and Release Your True Power. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book and what we can expect inside of it?
Totally. So this is my second book. My first book, Cured by Nature, was mostly my story of coming off of 14 pharmaceutical drugs, cold turkey, and replacing them with natural remedies, mind-strengthening techniques, meditation. And this book is, that book was very much the why to my story. And I think people really resonated with the why, because a lot of us are going through things But this book is more the how. Like, okay, that's great that that you needed to change your life. And what I found was that people were trying to implement the things in Cured by Nature into their life to help them overcome trauma or deal with their own health issues. And they would, like most people, they would fall off the wagon. And then a lot of the questions I got was kind of how, like, how have you been able to keep this up for 5, 6, 7 years without going back to the things that you relied on for so long? And this book, Wild Habits, is definitely the how. So what you can expect from Wild Habits is not only parts of the story, which I condense now into, the first chapter, but how to, if you want to start taking control of your own health, if you want to unlock your mind, if you want to release your true power, how to go about doing that.
I love that you're focusing on the how now, and you brought up a really good point. There are many things that we can do in terms of our diet and lifestyle that are going to help improve our health. And very often they're pretty straightforward and to the point. The bigger issue is, how do we convince ourselves to actually do it? And how do we get ourselves motivated to actually do it? So let's talk about this unlocking the mind part. So tell us a little bit about, you talk about the miracle of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get our mindset in the right place to start crushing life?
So honestly, that's why I invented the method, the WILD method that's in the book, because first you need to have, WILD is an acronym and it stands for willingness, intuition, love, and discipline. And to do anything in life and to really make it a new habit, these are the steps we need to take. So to unlock your own mind, you need to be willing to recognize that, whatever you're doing thus far hasn't worked or is not working to its greatest potential, right? And then you need the intuition to figure out what to do that would actually bring you whatever you're searching for, whatever you want your life to look like, whatever you want that headspace to be every single morning. You need to figure that out, because I think a lot of us go through life pretty unconsciously, and then we wonder why we're not happy. And it's like, because we're not bringing these experiences that are really enriching our lives. The next step is love. You need to have the love, really the self-love, to do that thing that you figured out would be the thing that brings you joy and happiness and does change your mindset and does change your attitude about life, right? And then the D stands for discipline. You need to have the discipline to do all of those steps every single day until it becomes a new habit, whatever that new thing is. And then once you start implementing these habits into your life every single day and they become non-negotiables, your habits become your life, your entire life. I mean, it starts with your mindset, and your mindset becomes your actions, and your actions become your habits, and your habits become your entire life. And so once you have the tools to recognize exactly what needs to change and exactly how to change it, I guarantee you life will start to look a lot differently for you.
Words are just so, so powerful. So I completely agree. And I'm often telling, as I'm sure you do, telling people that to be really careful with your words and your thoughts, because the things that you're thinking, let's say, as an example, you have negative thoughts about yourself. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a loser, I can't do things. Well, then, even though you think it's not that bad because you're just saying it in your head, what happens is you start acting from that place of being the loser, being the defeated person, being the whatever, and it starts really shaping your actions. So it's really, really important to really be careful with our words. So I love that you brought that up. Sorry.
Stand guard at the door to your own mind. I mean, that to me, that's really action number one when you start to change anything, is you have to be dedicated to that change. And to do that, you can't let anyone else's thoughts or anyone else's negativity in. And I give tools in the book to do that. And I also cite studies where instead of having to do heart surgery, they've been able to unclog arteries just by helping patients harness their thoughts and go for walks and really get more clear-headed than they had been previously. And so honestly, for me, that just proves that there are alternatives to our health, and people need to know that these alternatives exist before they make decisions about their health and the rest of their life.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. I actually haven't heard of that study, so I'm going to have to look that up. That sounds pretty crazy, but it makes sense. I think that we sometimes forget that everything's connected. Our thoughts, our emotions, our mind, our body, all of these things are connected. They're not separate entities that exist separately from each other. So, of course, they're all going to influence each other. Well, let's talk about the intuition step, because this is something that I've been interested in recently, and I'm sure it's a topic that people probably ask you about a lot, is how can you really listen to your intuition? Because I think sometimes when the thoughts in our heads are telling us bad things or telling us negative things, or it's hard to hear what the intuition is because you're also bombarded with, let's say you have an issue that you're going through, and then you talk to 5 of your best friends, and then you have 5 people's opinions in your head and you don't know what to do. So how do you really tune into what's your thoughts and what's your intuition versus what's everyone else's opinion or idea for you?
Okay, so I think we really need to start harnessing the difference between facts and opinions, right, in our own life. So, for instance, in my situation, like it was a fact that I had grown up with disadvantages, right? But it was an opinion that that would limit me as a person. It was a fact that I'd had 14 diagnoses and been put on 14 pills. It was an opinion that all those diagnoses were correct and that pills were the solution to those problems. So I think, but it's really hard because especially when we're told as children or something that we have a health condition or something's wrong with us, and then every single time we take a pill or we medicate, we're reiterating to ourselves that that is really a problem, both to our minds and to our bodies. And so definitely for a long time, my intuition was completely drowned out. And as I think a lot of our intuition is, the longer we kind of go through life, the more things we get bombarded with, the harder it is to hear our true thoughts. And so for me, the tools in the book, I have a whole chapter on meditation. I have a whole chapter on the power of your energy, how to tune those people out, how to figure out who in your life is toxic and isn't giving you the correct opinions, really, because so many people, I mean, the majority of people are going through life rather unconsciously and are mostly negative, right? And so we need to be able to listen to ourselves before we can even attempt to let anyone else's opinion in. Like when I first came off my medication, I didn't tell my family I came off for over a year. The reason I didn't tell them that is because I didn't want them to feel guilty for putting me on medication to begin with and then start kind of inserting blame and shame and all those things that go with it into my recovery process. I needed to do this on my own. And I think the more responsibility we can take for ourselves, and then the more you listen to your intuition, right? And then listening to your intuition becomes a habit, the less you go out and ask for 5 people's opinions, because it's so easy to trust yourself that you don't even want the thing to be true to be kind of like tainted by other people's opinions. You just go out and start doing it and living it, and then those people follow suit and their change around you or fall away. And that's how we get rid of toxicity in our life, is just by listening to ourselves more and more and more. And I think we're taught a little bit that this is selfish, but I think it's one of the most selfless things you can do, because the more you listen to yourself, the easier it is to help other people.
Yeah. And I think also sometimes in life, the answers to our questions maybe aren't always logical, or on paper, they don't make sense. And, talking about things is one thing, but actually feeling something and being in the situation and reading the person or just feeling into it, I think gives you a very different direction or answer versus just thinking about it all in your head and asking for people's opinions and going about it that way. So,
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways to connect. You can meditate, you can write it out, you can, read a book on the topic. I mean, depending on what you're working on, there's so many different ways to self-educate before you give it up to other people, right? And then the more you do that, the more you trust yourself, the easier it is to do it next time. And then it just becomes this intuitive thing. Listening to your intuition itself can become a really intuitive thing for you.
right. And so you mentioned about toxicity and your friends' toxic opinions. And of course, I think it's always a good idea, if you are going to ask for advice, making sure you're looking at, okay, who are you asking advice from? Are you asking someone who's had terrible relationships for relationship advice? Like, why are you going to take it? If you find yourself, as we all do, growing out of friendships, right? Realizing that you've come or evolved a bit more than the people that you've traditionally hung out with, what advice do you have? Because I know that can sometimes be hard to be like, okay, I've had a friend for so long, or this person's been in my life for so long, but I'm realizing they're sort of toxic, they're negative, they just are not serving me right now, serving my life, or they're not a good influence on my life. How do you let them go?
That's a really good question. We all have to do this, right, to grow and to change. I'm always very surprised by the people that have had the same people in their life for a really long time. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I also think it's cute and adorable. But to not pepper your life with new people as well is like there's a happy medium, I feel like, as well. And first, like we talked about previously, once you start listening to yourself and really acting on these things without asking for other people's opinions first, the more the people who should be in your life will be in your life, and the more the people who should not be in your life will fall away, right? Your time is one of the most precious gifts you have. So don't just give it away to anyone. You have to cultivate the people who are in your life and who are, who really bring you the most joy and happiness and are encouraging you and are supporting you. Because the more you do that, the more those people show up. A large part of this is where the love part in the Wild Method comes into, right? Because without love for ourselves first, like the old adage is so true, without loving yourself first, you really can't love anything else. And so I feel like the more we show ourselves love, the more the people who are supposed to be in our lives stay in our lives, and the people who are not supposed to be in our lives fall away. And it's easier to trust ourselves after that than when we let other people's opinions kind of rule our life and rule our destiny, which I had done for so long, right? Because it's easier to just give your power away and just say, like, I don't have any control over this. I don't know what to do. I'm going to let someone else do it. I'm going to let someone else pay the bills or diagnose me or give me a pill or tell me what's wrong with me, instead of really using your intuition and your self-love to figure it out for yourself and then tell the world and allow people in your life that truly support that and who really bring you joy and who really want what's best for you. Because for me personally, I didn't have other than my family who had the best intentions, but really same thing at the end of the day, we're giving it up to doctors. We're just bringing me to professionals and saying, like, you tell us what's wrong. We don't know, we're not educated in this. But the more you give yourself the tools, right, the love and the education, and you use your intuition and you just bring these things into your life all the time, people who are negative and people who don't want what's best for you are not going to put up with that. They'll spend their time somewhere else, and so will you. And so those people will naturally fall away, and they don't have to make it this big deal of, like, it turns into the idea of we just both belong in other people's lives. This isn't like abandoning somebody. This isn't me not supporting someone anymore. This is just like, I don't have time for this, and this person doesn't either. Or they're spending their time unwisely if they want to spend their time bringing me down all the time, right? Because that's not what we're put here to do. And so just finding people who really support you and make you happy and bring you to the best version of you at all times, not only see who you are, but see who you can become. When we start to make self-loving decisions, those people show up.
Right. And I think that as we get older, we realize just how precious our time is, and we really start using it a lot more wisely, hopefully. And I think just by focusing our time and attention and efforts on being in the places or the scenarios that are going to put us in the place to meet someone who, or meet friends that are going to support us and be positive, versus wasting our time hanging out with people who bring us down and are negative. It's just sort of lining up your calendar that way and not making time for the negative, and making more time for the positive.
Yeah, exactly. And realizing that every single, everyone's energy affects everyone else's energy and everything else in the world. So it really is important who you surround yourself with, because to think that that's not having effect on you is to do yourself a grave disservice.
Right. Well, there's a saying that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yeah, I mentioned that quote in both my books. It's a quote by Jim Rohn, which really is so true. I feel like the more life you live, the more you realize how true it is you're the 5 people you spend the most time around. So yeah, I mean, not everyone you spend time around, but certainly the 5 people you spend the most time around, you're going to take on their language and their habits and their thought patterns and their negativity or positivity or their joy, because that's what we were built to do. That's what the human species is. We have this beautiful thing called empathy in which we can affect one another. And sometimes we're just using it really unconsciously.
Right. So, any tips for anyone in terms of, like, let's say maybe we don't have five amazing people that are closest to us, and finding friends. I think sometimes, again, as we move further and further away from school and college, we and start to get into that daily grind of working every day, and then some friends are getting married and moving and things like that. You can find yourself without maybe many very strong friendships and relationships. So any tips in terms of like finding cool people to be part of your inner circle or cultivating those relationships?
That's a really great question. I try to not let the fact that people move or get married or have life changes get in the way. I think we live in a society right now that's in a culture that's so wonderful. Like you and I can connect like this, even though we're in different cities, and I can connect with somebody who lives halfway around the world. Should we figure that out on a time schedule? And I don't really let friends fall away that are important to me. And then I also really believe in the power of introduction, right? And connecting people. And so I feel like just staying connected to the tribe that you most relate to, that's how you get into that tribe. I mean, I say this thinking mostly digitally, but even literally, like just hang out around the people that bring you the most joy, or go to the places, go to like, the festivals or the music venues, or like don't go to the bar, go to the place where other like-minded people are going to be. And I guarantee you'll find people who are interested in similar things, and then become your tribe, and then bring you to a place that's way better than either previous friends, or sometimes being alone, or just having negative people in your life. If you give yourself the opportunity, instead of going into it with the negative mindset of, oh my God, nobody wants to be my friend, no one's going to show up to my party. It's so weird to, you mentioned my book launch from the other day, and it's so weird to have hundreds of people show up to something for me. It takes a while to wrap your mind around, because there's still a part of like me in there's still fourth grade me that's going like, no one's going to show up to my birthday party kind of mentality. And it takes like years to get out of that. But the more you really accept and surround yourself with people who support you, the easier it is to accept that there's people out there that support you. And so putting yourself in that situation alone, and giving yourself the opportunity to know that this is a truth. There's billions of people out there. I guarantee you'll find somebody who's really into what you're into if you just look earnestly enough. I mean, there's 3 billion people on Facebook alone. So I promise you there's people out there that are just waiting to find people like you, because they think they're alone too. And they don't know that there's people out there that really can support them and support their vision. So just putting it out there into the world constantly, and not getting disappointed if it doesn't happen immediately, is really the key.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's a great reminder that people do want to support us. Most people are nice and positive and are rooting for us. They're not trying to be mean and not show up to our birthday party.
Yeah.
And I think, also us supporting other people, like one of the best ways to make a friend is to support someone else, because when you're interested in someone, they're going to be interested in you as well. So yeah, so that's a great tip. Let's get back to the love part of the equation. And you mentioned self-love, and I feel like self-love is such a big topic now. And there's all these self-care Sunday hashtags and bubble baths filled with flowers and things like that. But I think when it comes to self-love, it really again goes back to talk. Like we can give ourselves as many massages and pedicures and blowouts as we can afford, but that doesn't mean that we love ourselves. So
Right.
how do we start switching that mindset? Because I think it is really common. They cite these statistics all the time, like upwards of 90% of women hate their body or have a negative thought about their body every day, and these crazy statistics. So how do we start changing that mindset about how we view ourselves?
Well, if you do everything with love, you win, right? So I think it's about just getting vulnerable with yourself and being honest about the fact that no one is perfect. It's not about reaching some level of perfection. And you're right. It's not about you can take bubble baths, and you can get your hair did, and you can, say hashtag self-love all day long. But if at the end of the day, you're still engaging in negative self-talk, that's not self-love. Like that, you can sit in a bathtub and hate yourself the entire time. And so I feel like cultivating the mindset. When it's hard to love, that's when we need to love the most. When it's hard to love ourselves, that's when we need to give ourselves the time to accept that we deserve whatever it is we want. I mean, I think that's the most self-loving thing that you can do. And instead of dwelling on what you don't have, focus on what you want. And don't get disappointed that you don't have it. Whatever it is you want, just keep your focus on it, because that's the highest form of self-love, is to start feeling like you deserve every single thing that you want. And then once you put that out into the world, other people pick up on it, and you'll inspire love in other people too. And I think people can tell, it's hard on Instagram, honestly, because it's just so easy to put one picture and like a nice caption out there and have people think that you live this thing. But when you really live it, people pick up on that, I think, way more than if you don't, because love is a practice. You practice it the same way you practice anything else. If you want to sing well, you got to sign up for voice lessons, and you got to practice every single day. Love is a practice. We have to show it to ourselves first. And then whatever we want, we start taking the self-loving actions to get there. Your goals become attainable. And like I said, when it becomes hard to do it, that's when you know you need to do it the most again. So you just come back to love every single time. Practice love no matter how disappointing life seems. Practice love no matter what people around you are doing. Get vulnerable even when it's hard to get vulnerable. Because guess what? The worst thing that can happen is you cry. And that's healing too. So don't be afraid of it just because it sounds like it's messy. It is messy. Peeling back those layers and finding out what loving ourselves really looks like is messy. But once you get there, it's beautiful. And because it's a practice, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And then it just becomes a lifestyle. And you don't have to think about it anymore. And you approach every day and everything with love and vulnerability. And I guarantee you other people will pick up on that.
Yeah, I love that you said it's a practice, because I think sometimes we forget, and this goes for a lot of habits and a lot of parts of our life, is we think we need to get it overnight, and then if we don't get it, then we just throw in the towel, when it doesn't work out for us. And so I think constantly reminding ourselves that every day is a challenge, and we always just have to meet everything with love. And if you mess up sometimes, it's okay, or have that negative self thought, it's okay, but just kind of keep going back to trying to be loving again, and changing your perspective. So you don't have to be perfect overnight. It's a perpetual practice of constantly reminding yourself to go back to that place of love.
Yeah, and every time you remind yourself, right, it's you've caught yourself. So it's actually a good thing every time you have to go back, because you've caught the negative self-talk and gone, oh, wait, no, okay, I got to figure out where this is coming from, and then ask yourself why until there's no more whys left. And I have other prompts in the book of how to really, really practice these things in your everyday life, because it's so different for each and every one of us. We all have very similar hangups about love, but also really individualistic hangups about love that we need to work through. And it's very true that you can't fully love another person until you love yourself. And the reason that that's true is because when you experience that form of self-love, your love for other people and other things just expands in a way that if you don't have that as a base, it never will.
Right. Totally. It all starts with you first, for sure.
Yeah.
So, and then let's talk about the discipline, because that sounds like the most unfun one. When you hear the word discipline, you're like, oh no, like, am I back in school? So, but obviously, of course, discipline is needed. So, can you talk a little bit about that, and what should we be doing in that department?
Yeah. Well, discipline, I think discipline is fun, right? So it's what drives you to follow through with changing your life. It's just willpower in action. And every decision you make is a choice between getting better and getting worse. There is no standing still in life. And discipline really, I think, brings this home, because when you start something for a little while and then you fall off the wagon, you realize that you're not getting better, you're getting worse. There's no in between. And so the second you can, and discipline is a practice as well, you have to practice it over and over again for it to really stick. But then once you start, it just becomes so much easier. The more you reinforce an action, the more easily you can accomplish it next time. And that's what discipline is. It's just using your willpower in action every single day. And then you'll get that reward. You get the reward personally, emotionally, financially, whatever it is, wealth wise, inside and outside, every single time you really stay disciplined in a new habit or a healthy action or something self loving that's good for yourself, or listening to your intuition, or being willing to change, every single time you follow through, you're reiterating to your body that you want to change, and you're reiterating to your mind that you want to change. And so that's why discipline is so powerful. And I think it is a little daunting for people, and that's why half the steps are, kind of like businessy, and half the steps are a little woo woo, because life is a little serious and it's a little woo woo. And so we need to have a healthy balance of both. But without the discipline, the other steps don't really matter, right? Because you can do all three of them once or twice, but that doesn't make it a new habit, and that's not going to change your life. So the discipline is the key aspect, and looking at it as something empowering rather than something that's daunting, of like, I want to be the most disciplined mofo I know, so that I can accomplish more than everybody else and I can have all of my dreams fulfilled. Because without discipline, that is not going to happen. There's no such thing as overnight success. Every single person you see that you consider successful has worked their ass off to do what they do with little to no reward for a very long period of time. But now they get to live their wildest dreams. That's why there's somebody that you admire and respect. And so discipline is the key to that. And the second that we really start practicing it, just like the other steps we've talked about, it becomes the lifestyle, and it just becomes easier. And staying disciplined and staying on course with things will just become your new normal, and your life will rapidly change.
Right. Yeah. I always say knowing is not the same as doing. And so
Right.
if you don't actually take action, then all the time you've invested or money you've spent on learning the techniques is going to be useless because you're not actually doing them. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that's a part, jokes aside, I am glad that that's a part of your method.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like, and I say this about every step, I say it's the most important part, but like, this is definitely, I mean, none of the other steps work if you don't stay disciplined in doing them. So it's definitely the most important part. And it's the most important part of improving your health and releasing your true power and really taking claim of your life.
Totally. In the book, you're walking people through this whole process of developing the willingness and the intuition, the love and the discipline in order to figure out or to achieve their goals in health and wellness and in their life. Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's why it's 300 pages.
So,
I don't write small books.
well, that's good. No, you have a lot of good information. I also love your blog posts as well. They're really great. So, one hurdle I think that people sometimes go through when changing their habits is that they first have to break their bad habit. What are some ways we can start? Sometimes it's difficult, right, to release that bad habit. So, what are some tips you have for breaking bad habits?
I think getting to know what toxicity looks like in your life is crucial. So, really, just spending time for yourself, asking yourself why you're doing these things. Like, once you're willing to accept what they are and you have the intuition to know what the change might be, you really have to just take a really good, hard look at why you've engaged in these things for so long. Because if you don't ask yourself why, you're never going to change. And once you do ask yourself why, and you really get honest and vulnerable about your why, you'll change immediately, because you can't go back to just thinking that this is an okay thing to do, whatever it is, once you've admitted to yourself why you're doing it. Because you'll think about why every single time you're doing it once you get honest with yourself. And so commitment is the key, and asking yourself why you're engaging in something is part of that, because habits are a commitment in and of themselves, right? Like, every time we engage in something negative, whether it's negative self-talk or it's a bad habit, which negative self-talk is definitely one of the worst habits we have, we're telling our bodies and our minds that this is the way to be. And that is a lifestyle commitment. And so making the self-loving decision to make a different lifestyle commitment, make a positive lifestyle commitment in the future, is really the way to break a bad habit immediately. I don't even want to say overnight. You can do it right now, as long as you're really, really honest with yourself about why you're engaging in a thing. And then once you know why, you will know how to change for the better immediately.
Yeah, I agree. I think understanding your why is important in so many areas of our life, and it allows us to really get to the root problem versus kind of just a band-aid fix. It allows us to really go in there and change whatever that root cause is and when we change the root cause, that habit becomes much easier to break. So in the book, you also talk about some wild strategies. And I know you've maybe we should actually start with your story because I know I just jumped right into the book. I was so excited to talk about it.
It's
Um,
all good.
for people who are not familiar with your story, I know you touched on a little bit, but can you just tell us how you got here to where you are? I know your first book was Cured by Nature, where you went into that more deeply, but can you share a little bit about how you got to where you are now and why you're doing what you do now?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I was actually born on drugs. My mother did cocaine on the way to the hospital to give birth to me and did drugs and drank and smoked cigarettes the entire time she was pregnant with me. And so she she got into heroin by the time I was 5, and she overdosed in front of me when I was 6. And my grandparents got custody of me not long after that. She survived, luckily, that overdose, but she was in and out of jail and rehab my whole childhood. And so when I was about 10, she got sober and came and lived with my grandparents and I for 2 years. And then when I was 12, she relapsed in front of me again. And I had to tell my whole family because I was the only one who had discovered it. And then not long after that, I was sent to my first child psychiatrist and put on a very heavy duty mood stabilizer called lithium, basically to deal with the trauma I had recently seen and what I had seen throughout my whole life. And so um, that was my first drug, was at 13. My second drug was a drug for ADHD at 14. Then I was on painkillers for scoliosis and arthritis, and I was on anti-inflammatory drugs, and then birth control, and then things for my skin, and then anti-anxiety medication, anti-depression medication, basically anything you can name, from, anything you could put somebody on. I've pretty much been on all of it. Opioids, birth control, Accutane. I've been on pretty much every drug there was at the time. There's a lot more drugs in the 7 years I've come off them, but I was on every kind of drug that you could basically put a person on for 11 years. And in January of 2011, I got a phone call letting me know that my best friend had taken her own life. And that was a catalyst for me, not only because it was very life changing and something I had to figure out how to get through basically on my own, because that tore my entire group of friends apart. But I was also in an abusive relationship that I'd been in for 3 years with somebody who had literally tried to kill me. I had a restraining order against this person. I was working a 9 to 5 job at a lab. So I have a bio background. That's why I really do touch on a lot of science to explain, habits and how we can change in my books. And I had been working at Weill Cornell for like 2 years, and just involved this really long commute. Like I was commuting every day for like 3 hours just to get to and from work. And I wasn't happy in any way, shape, or form. And about 2 months after my best friend's funeral, I attempted to take my own life as well. And literally in that moment, I recognized, when it didn't work, I recognized that, I was just this human who had made a lot of mistakes, but I wasn't a mistake. And every single thing I had done was a choice. And if I could make better choices next time, I could have better actions and better beliefs and better habits. And then ultimately, I could be a better person. And once I had that revelation of like, this has just all been me giving into giving my power away all the time for years and letting other people tell me what's wrong with me and what I need to do to fix it rather than tuning in and listening to myself. I realized that medication was one of my the most toxic relationship I'd ever had. I just blindly taken these pills for 11 years without thinking about the fact that it was definitely harming me. I was in the hospital all the time for septic kidney and liver infections, and nobody ever said this is probably because you're 100 pounds and on 14 drugs. But my intuition told me it was because I was 100 pounds and on 14 drugs. And if I needed to get better, which I really wanted to, I didn't want to die. I wanted to live my best life. And if I really wanted to do that, if I wanted to think better and I wanted to act better and I wanted to form better habits and I wanted to have a better life, I probably shouldn't be on 14 different drugs. And that's when I decided to come off cold turkey, which is not a method I recommend. And the reason that I write books about this now is to give people the tools to do that if they choose to do that in a healthy way, but also to give them the tools so that hopefully they don't ever have to get to the point of doing that. Because I went through withdrawal for 3 years. While I was going through withdrawal, though, I really started to use these steps. I became willing to see what I wanted my life to look like. I had the intuition to figure out how to take the steps to get it there. I mean, not every step was the perfect step. Sometimes I took 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, but at least, like I said, I wasn't being stagnant anymore, because stagnation is the trigger for so many of our harmful habits. And then once I started to make self-loving decisions, things really started rapidly changing. Like, books literally fell off the shelf and at my feet that had solutions to problems I had medicated for many, many years, totally natural solutions with plants and spices and foods that I had in my own kitchen cabinet already. And then once I started really applying that, and using my discipline to apply that to my life, and not just read about these things, like you said, and know them mentally and educationally, but like to apply them to your life. It's one thing to know something. It's another thing to really start applying it and have the discipline to apply it every single day. Once I really started doing that and trying these things earnestly, and they worked. I mean, I was on fentanyl, which is like, it kills more people now than any other drug because it's 10 times more powerful than heroin. And people are doing it like it's heroin, and they're dying left and right. Like 16,000 deaths last year were related to fentanyl overdose, and that's just what they know about, right? So, and once I recognized that like fentanyl had done nothing for my pain, I mean, I'm opioid intolerant. And so they'd given me these patches, and I would slap these patches on and they would make me nauseous, and they really wouldn't ever help my pain or make anything go away. And of course, then I thought at the time before I made this decision, when I would take these really powerful drugs, nothing would happen. I'd be like, oh my God, something really is wrong with me. Like, how is this not working? How is this not doing anything? Once I started trying things like turmeric and skullcap and garlic and ginger, and they actually worked, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So I've been taking these deadly drugs that could kill me for years, and they never did anything. And literally all I needed to do is drink a turmeric tea like 6 times a day, and I'm totally pain free. Like, why did nobody ever tell me this? And so once I really started to use myself as a guinea pig, and started to read books that supported my life, and listen to records, and listen to people like Alan Watts and Yogananda, and people who spoke directly to things I was facing, and went back to my mentors from when I was a little kid, people like Oprah and Tony Robbins, who really had raised me at between 5 and 7 years old when I was going through some of the hardest times of my life. Those were the only people on TV or in my sphere that were saying like, you're going to be fine regardless of what you've gone through, which can be really, really hard to believe. Once I started going back to those things that I knew were good for me, that had helped me as a little kid, well, if it helped me when I was 5, it's probably going to help me when I'm 25. And really indulging in those things that I knew were good for me, and tuning out everything else. I mean, that's when everything started to change. And I moved from New York to California because of beautiful synchronicities in my life that I talk about in Cured by Nature. That, I mean, it was, even my family was like, that does not happen. You got to move out there and see what that's all about. Because clearly the universe is telling you to go out there and to deal with what that meant, to pack all my stuff and to really have the discipline to get in a car and drive across the country to some place I've never been to before and start my life in California. And then to start my blog, and from my blog to have my publishing company come to me and offer me my first book deal. And then from that book to be able to write this book and to do everything I do now, like speaking and music wise, and just been with my skincare company, and just being able to live my wildest dreams. I moved out here with $300 in my pocket, like literally, and I had already paid my first month's rent, and I was just like hoping I was going to make enough money to pay the next month. Nobody ever told me what to do or what my next step was, or really came in and gave me the support, of the financial support so many other people in our space have. That to me was just proof that I can do whatever the hell I want. Like, as long as I stay on course and make it a positive, self-loving thing where I'm using my intuition, and I'm always being willing to be vulnerable and to change and to share my story so that I can help other people and make it this larger mission. Like, that's why I do what I do right now. And that's why I'm so grateful to be able to do it, because I should have died like so many times, but clearly I'm here, and I'm here for a reason. And I think we are all here for a reason. You don't have to get to rock bottom to know that you were put on this earth to do something wonderful. And just figuring out what that is, it can take you a day. It can take you 3 minutes of earnest meditation to have that aha moment of like, oh my God, that's what I'm put on this earth to do. And then just to take the steps to do that every single day is so powerful. And I really, knowing that now my life's mission is to give people the tools to do that, to release their true power and become their best selves, like it makes everything I went through so worth it. And also it has a place, and I think it has a place. Going through things and going through traumatic things has a place for absolutely everybody. And so if you're listening to this right now and you're going through something and you have no idea why, go through it, and I promise you within very short order you will realize exactly the place it has in your life.
Wow. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for doing what you do now because, like you said, you probably should have died multiple times. And most people who would have been in your position, who are in your position, may never get to where you are now because they just can't get out of it. You know, they're just so stuck in it. And for the fact that you were able to basically walk away from that toxic lifestyle and all of the drama and the tragedy that you experienced growing up and completely turn it around. I mean, it just gives hope to so many of us because I think we all have personal tragedies and challenges and things going on in our life to different varying degrees. And it's really comes down to our willingness
Mhm.
and to our mindset, like you mentioned, to really turn things around and not be the victim and use all of these challenges as an opportunity to get to a better place and maybe not even just help ourselves but eventually be able to help others as well. And a lot of times our mess becomes our message or our mission, and we do have to go through these crappy things in our life in order to get to the other side, maybe appreciate things more, look at life in a different way with a new perspective, and have the ability to help many more people who are suffering or going through the same thing as us. So just, yeah, I really thank you for the work that you're doing and sharing your story because it's really powerful and really
Thank you.
inspiring.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing too, because it's, even giving people a platform to share messages like this is a beautiful thing. Never mind all the other amazing, wonderful things you do and content you create and things you share. So thank you. And I also want people to know that when I came to this conclusion, I was still on 14 different drugs. And so I know we all have this mentality of, we have something that we feel like might hold us back, or like, I can't do it. Like, if I can do it, if I can come to this aha moment on 14 different drugs with, and I have the scars to prove that that suicide attempt was very, very real, and very messy. And if I can come to this conclusion at the lowest part of my life, I guarantee you can do it. And I don't want people to come to the lowest parts of their life to see how they can help and inspire other people. I mean, it can help you and propel you forward. But if you can use someone else's story or even parts of your own story before they get too bad, to just use that as an aha moment and see that, we all have resistance, but we need to be focused on living at our highest frequency and showing up for ourselves all the time, because that's the only way that, if helping people is our goal or our mission, that's the only way we're going to be able to do that.
Totally. So just back to the wild strategies, you talk about like nature's alternative remedies to the conventional way of doing things or treating things. So do you have any top favorite natural remedies for things maybe that would help people just in their everyday lives or dealing with any common issues?
Totally. So I love GABA. We should all be getting GABA. GABA is a really wonderful neurotransmitter that's in all of us, but we don't, a lot like, melatonin, we don't have enough of it. We kind of stop producing it as we get older. And so GABA is a really wonderful way to kind of give yourself a more tranquil base. I think we all deal with anxiety, and this is a way to kind of give yourself a base normal. If you find yourself dealing with anxious or stressful feelings, as we all do, I also think everybody should start to take valerian as well, because it also helps with anxiety and it helps us with sleep, and magnesium, because none of us have enough magnesium, and scientists really think that it's contributing to the mass anxiety that we all face, is because we're just not getting enough of these supplements in our body to give us a base normal. And then once we have this base, we can engage in all these other self-loving actions like meditation, like going for hikes and walks, and doing things that really bring us back to our true selves and our true calling. Those are some of my absolute favorite supplements. I also think we should all be taking 5-HTP and CoQ10, which are just wonderful for hundreds and hundreds of different things we may be going through, but same, like they help with anxiety. They help bring everything else you're supplementing with. They make it more readily available for your body. And so if you want to start anywhere, I would start there. I think I just named like 7 things. So I think, yeah, you got some choices.
We have a lot of things to look into. And can we learn more about those on your site or in the book?
Oh, yeah. If you go to theorganiclifeblog.com and you type in any issue, you type in pain, you type in anxiety, you type in pretty much anything you're dealing, acne, anything you're dealing with, like the solutions will come up. I have pages of just different supplements and then kind of what they're used for. And then you can click on them. They all take you to Amazon, where you can read like thousands of reviews before you decide to purchase them and see what other people's experiences are. So you're not just taking it from me.
Excellent. So one last question that I like to ask everyone is, if you can only give one tip to our listeners on how to live a happier and healthier life, what would that tip be?
Stand guard at the door to your own mind. I think we've touched on this a lot, but truthfully, like that, when I heard it put like that, of like, this is the most precious thing you have, and you have to stand guard of it, because if you don't, if you just keep giving your power away, you're not going to be able to implement these tools in the way that you can if you really stand guard and make sure that every single thing that's coming into your space is there to serve you and to help you.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Tara, for sharing all of your wisdom and your insights and more about the book. I'm really excited for all that you're up to. And you mentioned the blog, but is there anywhere else that our listeners can connect with you?
Yeah, come find me on Instagram or Twitter at Tara A. Mackey. And then they can head over to wildhabitsbook.com if they want to learn more about the book as well.
Thanks for tuning in this week. If you enjoyed and got value from this episode, I'd be so grateful if you can take just 1 minute to leave an honest review on iTunes, as that will help us reach more people and get incredible guests on the show. To say thank you, email a screenshot of your review to info@mariamarlowe.com and we'll send you a free 3-day healthy eating sugar detox meal plan. After each and every episode, I encourage you to come say hi on Instagram at Maria Marlowe, that's MariaMarlowe, or in the private Happier and Healthier podcast group on Facebook. In both of these places, we can continue the conversation about today's episode, so come and share what you think. If you want more, you can also head to mariamarlowe.com, where you'll find tons of healthy recipes, meal plans, and resources to help you live your healthiest and happiest life. Lastly, if there's someone you know who'd enjoy this podcast, make their day, and mine, and send it to them now. Until next time, don't forget, health and happiness are a choice. Our thoughts become our reality, so make sure you're thinking up a masterpiece.